When they told me to pay $80,000 or lose the land my grandfather bled for, I didn't shout, I didn't plead. I asked one quiet question. Did you bring enough body bags? That question landed like a thrown stone, and everything that followed was just the ripple. My name is Jack Tanner, and this is how a piece of paper nearly stole a lifetime. I grew up on this dirt, 140 acres of scrub and fence posts, and an old pump that hears more secrets than the preacher my grandfather, Earl Tanner, bought it in 1952, with a handshake and a promise. He carved, "No HOA, not now, not ever," into the underside of his workbench, like a prayer and a warning both, and I thought that was the end of it. I came back after years away to fix the barn, mend the fences, drink bad coffee at dawn, and answer to the land the way my family always did. The first morning I was back, the truck had hardly settled on the gravel when a black SUV rolled up too clean for these roads, and out stepped Karen Caldwell. Maple Ridge HOA President Heels, digging into dust hair that looked like it held a temper and a smile that could be laminated. With her were Denny Mills' clipboard like armor and Glenn Murphy, a man who'd practiced looking like authority in a mirror. They didn't ask permission to be here. They unfolded a folder and read a bill. Past due, assessments, fines, ordinance violations, and a total due, in a voice that intended to end things quietly, of $80,000. They had maps, annexation papers, county-looking seals, and one of them the clipboard man already had forms pre-printed. They told me my grandfather's land had been folded into Maple Ridge's extended boundary back in 2019. I watched them say, community standards, like it meant something other than sign here or we escalate. I set a crowbar down, went inside, and took the 12-gauge down from the rack, not because I wanted to start a war, but because sometimes showing a spine keeps the paper from getting too comfortable. I held it low stock against my hip and told them to step back from my fence. They left with a warning and a paper trail, and I called the sheriff, pressed save on the recording, and did the first sensible thing a tanner does. I started gathering proof. 2 mornings later, men in reflective vests came with city plates and a list of violations. Pictures, they said, came with complaints, and suddenly every creek on my property read like a crime. The county clerk's screen told me what the SUV hadn't. A filing had been made by a private consultant for Maple Ridge 3 weeks before I even moved back. Someone had been running a play while I was still dragging boxes. The clerk's offhand comment, "private legal consultant," tasted like gasoline. I dug into deed files and found my grandfather's handwriting on the original proud and blunt, "No HOA, not now, not ever." Underneath it, a proposed annexation shaded my land a different color signed by a name that didn't check out. The more I pulled, the more I saw the pattern maps shifted by inches become acres on paperwork used like a lever. Then my bank called. My debit card got declined at the lumber yard. The cashier shrugged politeness, and the line on the bank's screen said what a man doesn't want to hear. Civil lien attached to property emergency filing, $80,000. My accounts were frozen, pending verification. For a minute, a long, slow minute, the world narrowed to a pinch of light, and the thought that maybe, just maybe, I'd misread my grandfather's stubbornness for stupidity. Nights got heavier then. I thought of selling, of walking away, of letting the mortgage vultures eat what my family held for decades. I stared at the workbench inscription, ran my thumb over those carved letters, and felt anger turn into a kind of sober rage. They weren't asking me to pay, they were trying to make me invisible. I hired Erica Mendez. I mounted cameras, mirrored files on 3 hard drives, and for the first time in a long time consumed coffee that tasted like law instead of morning. Evidence started behaving like evidence when you paid it attention. A duplicate deed filed with a slightly shifted boundary. A consultant name that traced back to a law office where signatures didn't match a cashiered notary that didn't exist until years after the documents supposedly originated. Someone had forged signatures, stamped things that didn't have stamps, and couriered judgments like a magician slipping cards. Trevor Langston felt like a gift wrapped in barbed wire. He showed up one morning with spare wire and eager grin, hands that had mended real fences and stories that fit the land. He offered to help to check wiring hall pallets be neighborly in a place where neighborly meant a lot more than convenience. He was good company, steady hand someone who knew the county names and who to call for a backhoe. He listened when I talked of my grandfather, and for a while the loneliness of being the last tanner on that slope eased. I let him help. Then I set a test. An empty lockbox, a shiny brass key, a trail cam tucked in the rafters. At 2 in the morning my phone pinged motion detected. I crept to the barn and watched Trevor climb into the loft flashlight between his teeth hands where they shouldn't be. He cursed when the box was empty, then aimed a phone camera at my file cabinet like he'd been hired to steal a story. I caught him in the act, and when he tried to run it turned into a scuffle on a dirt floor under a hummed sky. In his backpack, a thumb drive labeled PT Ops, Fake Warrants, stamped with a seal that wasn't a judge's, and folded plats showing my land shaded differently. He spat out names at me, then not apologies, instructions, they'll send more, it's bigger than Karen. He said Lone Cedar Development backed Maple Ridge, that the HOA was a shoehorn for corporate plans. That night, with Trevor cuffed and a deputy bagging evidence, I understood the real game. Not a neighborly slap of penalties, but a campaign to claim land by paperwork and panic. The lien on my accounts had been executed, and for 48 hours Erica warned me I'd be held breathless while she moved pieces through a slow system. Those were the hours I questioned everything. Is this pride? Stubbornness? Was I making a fight out of nostalgia? I slept on the porch, watched the pump at dawn, and felt both small and furious. Then the proof arrived, handwriting analysis, digital timestamps, bank transfers traced to HOA discretionary funds. Fraud wasn't a theory anymore. It was a stack of stamped papers and a trail of dollars. We took it to court. In the gallery sat every awkward face that knows how to file a complaint in whispers. Neighbors, reporters, men who used to hold power in county seats. Karen Caldwell sat like a queen in a white blazer that had never tasted dirt and meant to keep it that way. Her lawyer polished lies like cufflinks. Our side was quiet and heavy. Erica Jason Rowell, a former board member who had seen the smoke behind the curtains and couldn't keep watching fires start. He testified about backroom votes, retroactive agreements, and directives to streamline problem properties, meaning me. When Erica slid side-by-side enlargements across the bench, the room inhaled. One was my grandfather's deed. The other was that supposed 1997 acknowledgement, and the expert's voice under his headphones said, "What truth sometimes needs a court to scream forgery." We had bank records showing payments out of HOA funds to Shell contractors' invoices to an APO box tied to Trevor and metadata that made Robert Lang Consulting look like a costume. The judge listened. The gavel fell. The court dismissed the HOA's claim-referred criminal aspects to the district attorney, and the sheriff's deputies took Karen in handcuffs through that oak courtroom door. She tried to say it wasn't her, tried to smear us as aggressive, but a room full of people who'd had enough didn't buy that performance. Her arrest wasn't cinematic. It was administrative. The click of metal and a muffled, "You have the right." The courtroom didn't cheer the way movies make it sound. There were only relieved breaths, a tightness in my chest that felt like the first thaw. I watched her led away and felt no victory song, only a flat, sure thing. This was where the story broke, not where it ended. They still had power in pockets. Corporate calls, calls to deputies, quiet meetings in the back rooms, but the paperwork that had been their weapon became their coffin. I quietly bought a piece of Maple Ridge at auction through a shell company Erica set up. Ownership in this case was leverage a vote in their meetings, a key in their ledger. I demanded ledgers, invoices, contracts, and when they shuffled and delayed the law, and the town's curiosity did the rest. The web unspooled checks to Trevor payments to ghost consultants, fabricated surveys. I put the stuff on a page, paid for ink in the local paper, and watched conversations change in diners and hardware stores. People who'd paid fines in fear started asking for receipts. The end, because I don't trade endings for parades, arrived in a courtroom and in a cell, in a line on a financial statement, and on a thumb drive whose metadata smelled of guilt. Karen was arrested, charges filed, and the county opened investigations into Lone Cedar's rezoning games. Trevor flipped. He told prosecutors names and dates and the way the meetings were run. But when Karen was handcuffed, that's where my script stops, not because everything was fixed, but because the person who'd led the campaign against me had been officially stripped of the power she used like a weapon. You don't get a slow walk into sunsets here. You get a legal order, a door closed behind a uniform, a judge's stamp, and the quiet of paperwork finally doing what it was supposed to show the truth. I walked back to the porch and ran my hand along the underside of the workbench, read the carving again. No HOA, not now, not ever. I didn't raise a glass. I didn't throw a party. I locked the gate, checked the cameras, and I slept that night with one hand on a file drawer and the other on a gun I hope never to use. The lesson was simple and bitter. When someone tries to erase your boundary, prove your line loudly, patiently with proof. Truth is paper too. Collect it, keep it, and when needed, bring it to the light.